He was born in a small town where people knew each other by name. His mother was a single parent, doing everything she could to raise her two children, him and his older sister. From the outside, their life seemed normal, but inside the walls of their modest home, something was wrong. Deeply wrong. Even as a toddler, his behavior stood out. Most babies cry when they're hungry or uncomfortable. He didn't. He would sit in silence, eyes fixed on something no one else could see. His mother used to joke that he was just a quiet one. But the silence wasn't peaceful. It was eerie. By the time he was 4, his mother began noticing strange behavior. He wouldn't play with toys like other kids. Instead, he'd break them apart and line up the pieces in a perfect row. Once he pulled the arms off every doll in the house and smiled as he did it. His sister, only 6 at the time, was terrified. He'd sneak into her room at night and just stand there, watching her sleep. At school, the problems got worse. Teachers complained he wouldn't follow instructions, and when other kids tried to talk to him, he'd respond with threats. He once drew a picture of his teacher tied to a chair surrounded by flames. When asked why, he simply said, "She made me mad." There was no emotion in his voice, just coldness. His mother tried everything. She took him to therapists, but he barely spoke during sessions. Doctors couldn't pin down a specific disorder. Some suspected oppositional defiant disorder. Others mentioned early signs of sociopathy. But there was no formal diagnosis, just concern and fear. At home, the situation became unbearable. He'd lash out for no reason. Once he punched a hole in the wall because his mother wouldn't let him stay up late. Another time, he threw a glass at his sister's head because she changed the TV channel. She needed 5 stitches. He began collecting lighters and matches. His mother found burned papers under his bed. One day she caught him trying to set fire to the living room curtains. He told her he wanted to see what would happen. She locked up anything dangerous, knives, cleaning chemicals, anything flammable. But nothing could stop him from finding new ways to scare them. The saddest part? His mother still believed he could change. She kept making excuses. He's just angry. He's just young. But deep down, she was scared of her own son. The sister kept her distance, barely speaking to him unless she had to. She wrote in her diary, "I don't think he loves us. I don't think he ever did." By the age of 10, the child wasn't just unpredictable, he was dangerous, and everyone in that house knew it, but no one could predict just how far he would go and how much pain he would cause. By the time he turned 11, the aggression had escalated far beyond what anyone could handle. The boy was no longer just a troubled child. He was a ticking time bomb. Every day brought a new outburst, a new reason for his family to live in fear. He began speaking less, isolating himself more, but his actions grew louder, more violent. He would smash things around the house with a blank expression on his face. Sometimes, he'd whisper to himself in the dark. One night, his sister overheard him saying, "They'll all pay. They'll all burn." She didn't sleep at all after that. The school had long given up on him. After multiple suspensions, fights with other students, and one incident where he locked a classmate in a supply closet and laughed as she cried, the principal expelled him. He was sent home, back into the house with his already overworked mother and terrified sister. His mother tried again to seek help. She begged social services for a psychiatric evaluation. Finally, a local clinic agreed to assess him. The therapist noted signs of antisocial behavior and possible conduct disorder. He warned, "He lacks empathy. He shows no guilt. You need to act now." But the system failed. There were delays in paperwork, no available beds in a nearby facility, and long waiting lists for treatment. His mother, desperate and scared, was told to keep him monitored at home until further notice. It was like telling someone to hold a wild animal on a leash and hope it doesn't bite. In the days leading up to the tragedy, his behavior became more erratic. He started staring at his sister for long periods, saying nothing. Once he followed her into the bathroom and stood at the door until she screamed. Another time, he cornered his mother in the kitchen and whispered, "You think I won't do it, but I will." She didn't know what he meant. She didn't want to know. Then came the final warning sign, a chilling one. He drew a picture, using a red crayon, of his family's house on fire. Inside, two figures were screaming behind the windows. Another figure stood outside, smiling, holding a match. When his mother found it, she froze. It was no longer a question of if he would hurt someone. It was when. That night, she planned to call for emergency intervention first thing in the morning. But the morning never came. On the night of the attack, the boy was eerily calm. He didn't argue, didn't scream. He had dinner quietly, went to his room, and waited. While his mother and sister slept peacefully in their rooms, he crept out of bed and walked into the garage. There he grabbed the gasoline can his mother had locked away, but he had found the spare key days ago. Within minutes, the house was engulfed in flames. The boy didn't run. He stood outside and watched, and smiled. It was just after midnight when the nightmare began. The house was silent, shrouded in darkness. His mother had finally drifted into an exhausted sleep. His sister, headphones in, was lying in bed, lost in a book. No one suspected a thing. No one sensed the evil moving through the hallway. He moved like a shadow, cold and focused. In his hands, a red gas can, stolen from the locked cabinet in the garage. He'd been planning this for weeks. He knew where they slept, how long it would take them to wake up, and which doors would be blocked. He poured the gasoline in silence, starting from the base of his sister's door. Then the hallway, then the living room. Every drop was deliberate, every step calculated. He left his mother's room for last, and then he lit the match. The sound was instant. A soft whoosh, followed by the sudden roar of fire consuming everything in its path. Flames leapt to the ceiling, smoke thickened the air in seconds. The house, once a place of warmth and family, had become a furnace. His sister woke up coughing, confused, the air already thick and toxic. When she opened her door, the hallway was in flames. She screamed, a desperate, piercing scream that shook the night. His mother woke next, panic setting in as the smoke poured under her door. She tried to open it. Locked. She banged, yelled for her children, not knowing one of them had locked her in. Outside, the boy stood across the street. Calm. Watching. The fire danced in his eyes as he listened to their screams echo through the windows. Neighbors heard the chaos and rushed out of their homes. One man tried to break the front door down, but was pushed back by the intense heat. Another called 911, frantically begging for help. The fire department arrived within minutes, but it was too late. The flames had swallowed the home from the inside. Firefighters broke windows, tried to reach the bedrooms, but the structure was collapsing. When they finally managed to pull the mother out, she was unconscious, barely alive, suffering from severe burns and smoke inhalation. They found the sister near the window, her hands bloody from trying to break the glass. She didn't make it. And the boy? He didn't cry. He didn't run. He was found standing barefoot in the neighbor's yard, his clothes untouched by flames, eyes fixed on the ruins of his home. When a firefighter asked what happened, he simply replied, "They're gone now, just like I wanted." He was calm. Too calm. The first responders didn't want to believe it. A child capable of such horror? But the evidence was undeniable. The gasoline, the matchbox with his fingerprints, the drawing he left on the kitchen table, his family burning, and him standing outside. It wasn't just a tragedy. It was murder, planned, executed. And the boy who did it never looked back. When the flames were finally extinguished, investigators stepped into what was left of the house, a skeleton of charred walls and blackened memories. But among the ashes, they began to piece together a story far more disturbing than a simple accident. The boy was taken into custody that same night. At first, officers assumed he was in shock, traumatized by the loss of his family. But something felt wrong. He wasn't crying. He wasn't scared. He sat in the back of the patrol car, staring blankly out the window, as if none of it mattered. The first major clue came when arson specialists examined the scene. They found clear traces of accelerant, gasoline, poured in specific patterns designed to trap the victims inside. Multiple points of origin were identified, meaning it wasn't a careless fire. It was planned, intentional. Then came the discovery of the matchbox in the backyard, tossed casually behind a bush. His fingerprints were all over it. In his bedroom, investigators found chilling evidence: drawings of burning houses, people screaming, and a figure that looked eerily like himself, smiling through the chaos. When questioned, the boy showed no remorse, no fear. Instead, he calmly explained how he had poured gasoline in front of their rooms, locked the doors from the outside, and set the fire. When detectives asked why, he shrugged and said, "Because they didn't listen to me, they didn't respect me." It was a motive as cold as it was horrifying. He described it as if he was recounting a school project, methodically, step by step. There was no trembling in his voice, no regret. He had fantasized about this moment for months, maybe even years. The neighbors were stunned. Interviews revealed that many had noticed strange things before: the boy killing small animals, lighting small fires in alleyways, vandalizing property. But no one thought it would come to this. One neighbor tearfully recalled, "I always told myself he was just troubled, but deep down we were scared of him." Relatives came forward too. An aunt admitted she had once caught him trying to suffocate the family dog. When she confronted the mother, she brushed it off, saying, "He's just acting out." Another cousin said the boy once threatened to burn his house down during a family gathering after an argument. Experts were called in to assess his mental state. A forensic psychologist concluded he exhibited strong signs of psychopathy: complete lack of empathy, deep-seated rage, and a chilling ability to manipulate those around him. They also discovered that he had been researching fires online, watching videos about how quickly different materials burned, studying fire escape routes and how firefighters responded. This was not a spontaneous act of violence. It was deliberate, calculated destruction. The town was left reeling. How had they missed the warning signs? How had the system failed to intervene before it was too late? In the end, the most terrifying truth wasn't just that he had murdered his own family. It was that he had planned it with the cold precision of an adult killer. And he was only 11 years old. The trial began 6 months after the fire, and the courtroom was filled with tension, grief, and disbelief. The boy sat quietly at the defense table, too small for the chair he occupied, his feet barely touching the floor. He looked more like a middle schooler attending detention than a child standing trial for murder. Because of his age, he couldn't be tried as an adult. But the prosecution pushed for the harshest possible sentence under juvenile law. They argued that this wasn't an accident, nor a sudden burst of emotion. It was premeditated murder. Cold, ruthless, intentional. Mental health professionals were brought in by both sides. One expert testified that the boy showed no empathy and no remorse, displaying traits commonly found in adult psychopaths. Another argued that his condition stemmed from years of emotional neglect and possibly undiagnosed mental illness. But the question remained: was he mentally ill or just evil? The media exploded with coverage. News outlets debated day and night. Some anchors focused on the failure of social services and mental health systems. Others painted the boy as a child monster beyond saving. The court of public opinion was divided. Was he a victim of a broken home and an uncaring system, or a manipulative killer born without a conscience? The judge delivered the sentence after weeks of deliberation. The boy would be sent to a maximum security juvenile facility until the age of 21, with mandatory psychiatric treatment and periodic evaluations. After that, depending on psychological reports, he could either be released or transferred to an adult facility. Many believed the punishment wasn't enough. Protesters stood outside the courthouse holding signs: "Justice for the mother and sister, no mercy for a murderer." Others argued that the system failed long before the fire, and the child was a product of neglect and institutional inaction. The tragedy sparked nationwide conversations. Parents, schools, and lawmakers asked the same haunting question: how do we prevent something like this from happening again? Psychologists urged for earlier and more aggressive intervention when children display violent tendencies. Teachers were trained to report disturbing behavior more quickly. Mental health funding in schools became a louder topic at town halls and policy meetings, but real change was slow. The house where it all happened was demolished. In its place, a small memorial was built. 2 white crosses in the grass, one for the mother, one for the sister. Flowers are still placed there from time to time, by people who never even knew them, but couldn't forget their story. And the boy? Now a teenager behind locked doors, still undergoing evaluations, still monitored closely. Some believe he'll never feel guilt. Others hold on to a faint hope that he can be rehabilitated. But one thing is certain. His story left a permanent scar on the hearts of everyone who heard it. A chilling reminder that evil doesn't always come in the form we expect. Sometimes it comes in the shape of a child.